I'm Stacey Brotzel, hanging out with my dear friend Daryl McIntyre, talking about climate anxiety. I think both of us sort of had that, what is it? Do I have it? I don't think so, but maybe my kids have it.
But then
maybe
we were
teenagers.
We were talking with somebody else, because I don't want to out the individual, who said, "Oh yeah, their spouse has serious climate anxiety along the line of all the warnings about what's going on, and it makes them anxious about their future, the children's future, the near future." Is that what climate anxiety is? Fear of what's coming?
Yeah,
Kinda
what is
feels
it?
like it.
What is it? And if we know somebody or perhaps we're suffering from it ourselves, what can we do about it?
Let's find out. For Canadian Certified Counselor, Director of Holistic Healing Counseling, it's right here in Edmonton, Shaheen Alarakia is joining us this morning. Good morning. Thanks so much for your time. How are you?
Hi, good morning. I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, I guess the first question is, what is climate anxiety?
Yeah, well, you guys got pretty much it right, but my favorite definition comes from the Handbook of Climate Psychology, and it defines climate anxiety as a heightened emotional, mental, or physical distress in response to the dangerous climate changes. And so you're right, it's a response to the changes of the environment that includes a lot of preoccupation or worry.
So are we talking about a fear of wildfires? Are we talking about fear of not having a reusable bag in the trunk of our car? Or are we talking about, what the earth is going to look like in 100 years, or all of the above?
I think it's kind of a fear of impending doom when it comes to the climate.
There was part of this was launched because of a Leger Youth study that came out, and it said that that more younger people are getting increasingly concerned about climate change. That 50% of Canadian millennials and Gen Zers think it's going to deteriorate the environmental situation. That more have almost climate anxiety, up about 7% over the last few years. Are you seeing that in your practice? Is it mostly younger people? And when I say young, I don't know, let's put a round number of, say, 30 or under.
Definitely. Clinically, I do see that my younger people, especially I'd say in the under 25 age, have at least some mild climate anxiety. And then for more severe climate anxiety, although I do see it in the younger population as well, more recently I have been seeing it even in 30 and above.
How does it manifest itself then?
Yeah, so climate anxiety does seem similar to anxiety in some ways in terms of its presentation. So it is that persistent worry and preoccupation. And so the topic for the worry is going to be climate change and the future. And then similar to anxiety, there's things like mood swings, anger, emotional outbursts, emotional dysregulation. And then what seems a little dissimilar to me in terms of versus anxiety is I do hear a lot of guilt coming up around when people are spending time outside of engaging with the climate crisis, which tends to perpetuate climate anxiety worse because they can't do the things that might recharge them. They feel bad about it.
Talking with Councillor Shaheen Alarakia this morning out of a clinic here in Edmonton. So, that there's going to be a group, and I wonder, is this just anxiety and people get triggered by any variety of things? It just happens there's a group of people who might be more triggered by all the talk about climate change. But it's just anxiety, is it not?
I mean, it is anxiety in that it's making life very difficult and overwhelming. And I think the thing that really differentiates climate anxiety from anxiety is the thing about anxiety is usually it's kind of tricking you, right? So we're going to grab at something like cognitive behavioral therapy to get us to start arguing with those thoughts and start seeing it's just a trick. You can go to that party and you can be okay. Whereas with climate anxiety, it's rooted in some science of climate change and climate catastrophe. And that's what differentiates it from just anxiety.
How can one cope?
Yeah, what do you do about it?
Yeah. What do we do if we think we are suffering from it, or perhaps maybe one of our kids?
Yeah, definitely. So, there's a variety of things. And for starters, I always recommend people carving out rest. Because like I said, sometimes people with climate anxiety will feel really guilty about rest. They want to be in action and helping all the time. And so having some boundaries around how people engage with the climate crisis and with climate activism and carving out times for rest is really important. It's important to allow our bodies to feel safe, and that we do that through rest. I also always recommend connecting with nature. The thing that people want to protect when it comes to climate anxiety is nature. And so finding time to connect with it and getting all those great benefits of reduction in anxiety overall, reduction in depression, increased baseline happiness, when you just spend some time outside can be very helpful. I also recommend to people to take action. So kind of putting their worry to use and connecting with advocacy groups, seeing what can they do to be a part of the solution, and then similarly connecting to hope through that, and sometimes outside of that, reading about good news when it comes to the climate crisis, what people are doing. And then, of course, therapy or seeking support. So we might find that in our own life or in some of those groups, activism groups, where we feel understood and heard. And we might also find that in the context of therapy, coming to someone like me who understands what people are going through and can lead them through a more personalized plan of maybe what's coming up for them individually and maybe how parts of their life might underline their worry as well.
You know that there are an awful lot of people, and in some ways I end up putting myself in that position too. It's just like there's so many. It seems like we're constantly trying to deal with, coping these days. It's so now we have another name for another thing we just have to cope with. Is there a fatigue, almost like a therapy or an issue fatigue that seems to sink in?
That's a great question. Well, I think sometimes we can head towards burnout when that happens, like when there's so many things on our plate, there's so many things that we're coping with, then definitely we can head to burnout, like an almost complete emotional shutdown. We don't want to get there, though. That can take months and sometimes a year or more to recover from. So it's great if you're noticing any sort of kind of mental health difficulties to be reaching out for help.
Definitely. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on for such an important topic.
You bet. Take care. Have a great morning. Shaheen Alarakia is a Canadian certified counselor. She's director of holistic healing counseling. It's a clinic here in Edmonton.